Hello again.
Right.
Okay, right. Okay, so we're looking at assignment 3 for police and criminal justice, and we're looking at the police and communities module. So, Dave Thompson, course tutor, and
Alex Brody.
Kimberly Denning.
Erin Tunnell.
just like BBC News, isn't it? Okay, so we're going to have a look at 8 different subjects today, and we're going to flip between the 3 of you whilst we're doing that, and then hopefully we'll build up a picture of what's required in the assignment. So, out of what we've got, who's going to start then? Where are we going to go?
We're going to quickly go on some relevant legislation on the police's public protection responsibilities and overall on a MAPA side of things. So
Okay.
I'll just quickly start. So MAPA stands for the Multi-Agency Public Protection Arrangement, and the Criminal Justice Act of 2003 provides for the establishment of MAPA in each of the 42 criminal justice areas in England and Wales. These are designed to protect the public, including previous victims of crime, from serious harm by sexual and violent offenders. They require the local criminal justice agencies and other bodies dealing with offenders to work together in partnership in dealing with them. Guidance on MAPA has been issued by the Secretary of State for Justice under the Criminal Justice Act of 2003 in order to help the relevant agencies in dealing with MAPA offenders. These agencies are required to have regard to the guidance, so they need to demonstrate and record their reasons if they depart from it.
Okay. So when you say these agencies, what agencies would you include in that then?
So normally you'd be looking at things like National Health Service, things like local authorities, anyone that would come under the, anyone who would be looking, say, sexual offenders, you'd maybe look at safeguarding children, for example.
Okay. So prison service?
Prison service, yeah, exactly, using with youth offenders particularly.
Okay.
Lots of different agencies
Right.
and government.
Brilliant.
Following on from what Kim said, MAPA is not a statutory body in itself, but is a mechanism through which agencies can better discharge their statutory responsibilities and protect the public in a coordinated manner. Agencies at all times retain their full statutory responsibilities and obligations. They need to ensure that these are not compromised by MAPA. In particular, no agency should feel pressured to agree to a course of action which they consider is in conflict with their statutory obligations and wider responsibility for public protection.
Okay. Yeah.
The police have lots of statutory duties in order to protect the public anyway through other different acts such as like the Human Rights Act, whereas in Article 2 it's where the right to life, so the police are then expected to go on to protect life in when they can. And there's Article 3 which protects the individual against torture, unhuman or degrading treatment, so the police have to make sure that they don't treat offenders or anybody in this kind of way and do what they can in order to stop that from happening, as well as in Article 8 which is to protect the private and family life, so they have to enforce laws and act in ways which won't be detrimental and share private information.
So how would they apply MAPA to like missing people and that then? How do they look at it that from that side of stuff?
Sorry, can you say that again?
If you talk about missing people in particular, what would you say the MAPA responsibilities are for that then? Because obviously it's primarily with the police, but
So, sorry, I'm just getting my head around the question. So MAPA is multi-agency working, and so for a missing person there'll be lots of different agencies that work together. The police would be one. Neighbourhood Watch could be quite useful in that, as they would provide any information on what they see. So MAPA is a way of agencies working together to do one task. So for missing persons it would be multiple agencies that might have information about the whereabouts. Forensics might have information about where they've been or any like recent forensic evidence, and CCTV might also have pictures of the missing person, and as well you can also check credit card and debit card transactions to see if they have been used recently.
okay. So you've got 42 police forces across the UK. So does somebody coordinate this completely, or is this like a kind of a loose kind of thing?
They all use the National Crime Agency,
Okay.
and that's their central database whereby all of this information will be able to be viewed by all the 42 submarines.
Obviously, when somebody goes missing, they don't necessarily stay in one area. They can travel. For example, there's that girl that went missing from Saltash a couple of weeks ago.
And
It wasn't just the Cornwall police that were looking for her, it was Devon.
Exactly, because you can cross border, can't you? You know,
So easily, get on a train.
Yeah, and in terms of MAPA, storing and sharing information about offenders is essential to the multi-agency approach. Information is stored in a central database known as VISOR, and according to each responsible authority's business model. So, that one.
Okay.
Just picking up from what Erin was saying, I've got a lot here on the Human Rights Act as well, and the College of Police in 2013 explained that all officers have an individual responsibility for ensuring that they are aware of the relevant legislation and are informed about the extent of their legal powers and the context with which those powers can be exercised. That's particularly relevant for the Human Rights Act 1998, and also every police officer, member of police staff, community support worker, special constable, volunteer, data processor, contractor, and any approved persons working on or on behalf of the police have access to a wealth of personal data, and as such they're all required to comply with the Data Protection Act 1998 and any supporting local policy or procedure designed to help achieve compliance.
Okay. So with a police officer or a special constable or somebody like that then, obviously that applies when they're working. Does it apply when they're not working?
Yeah, absolutely, because they still are they've got a responsibility for that data. It doesn't matter if they're off duty or on duty. As soon as they've taken that data, they would explain to the person they've taken it from that it's private, confidential, it stays within the police force, that it's not to be distributed unauthorised in an unauthorised manner.
And
Okay.
it doesn't go all the way around the police force, does it? It only goes to the relevant people.
Exactly.
That when we were talking, we did a bit on witness support, the other victim witness support, and they were saying that it stays with that person, and with
Like
the
the
family
family
liaison
liaison officer.
officers, whereas it stays with that person, then that's their focal point to the public,
Yeah.
so that they're not talking to Steve one day and Gerald the next. It's
Yeah.
going through one point, and it helps with the public confidence and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a lot of people that go missing then, and a lot of those people then end up within a situation as a result of being missing. They might end up being abused either within the family or outside of the family. So let's pick up from that then. Some child abuse is connected with missing
Yeah.
and some not. What's your interpretation in relation to that then?
So there's the under the Children's Act 2004, the police, the safeguarding and it promotes the welfare of children. So it puts that kind of duty on the police officers to do something about it, whether it's been reported, to investigate it, and just they can refer it onto things like social services and work with other agencies so that they can make sure that the child is as safe or free from neglect as possible. Because it's estimated at the moment it's like 1 in 3 children at some point in the UK experience some form of neglect, according to the NSPCC in 2017.
Well, the NSPCC and a lot of things that sort of outline 3 criteria really within child abuse. So you're going to try to explain what the actual 3 criteria are in relation to child abuse as such.
There's different types of neglect itself.
Yep.
There's sexual abuse, which I think we'll be talking a little bit later on, which is where children that are underage been forced to do different things that they didn't want to do, or they don't really know what it is that they're doing, and then can leave them with ongoing mental issues as well as
physical as well.
yeah. Then there's different types of neglect, like physical, where you're failing to provide the child the basic needs such as food, clothing or shelter, and failing to adequately supervise a child, so you're not providing for their safety. There's educational neglect, where you're failing to ensure the child receives an education. This quite often links them with other issues within that, like forced marriage or human trafficking. And there's also emotional neglect, where failing to meet a child's need for nurture and stimulation. And this could be humiliating them, ignoring them, trying to intimidate them or isolating them. It's often the most difficult to prove, because it's not you can't physically see it. It's
Yeah.
all internal. And there's also medical neglect, which is failing to provide healthcare for them. And this can include dental care and refusal of care or ignoring medical recommendations.
But if you're talking about child abuse in that kind of format, we know you've got the main ones like Bernardo's out there and NSPCC and other ones like that. If you're saying that within child abuse itself there's a number of different things including physical, if we take that a step further then, is not FGM actual part of child abuse? Because FGM is a physical act and a sexual act, and if you're looking at the neglect and the abuse side of stuff, does that form part of that? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely agree.
100%.
The child doesn't consent, do they? They don't really have enough understanding or religious belief, or it might not be their belief.
Exactly. Well, actually, according to Burrage 2015, the World Health Organization, the WHO, states that FGM includes any procedure that intentionally alters or causes injury to the genital organs for non-medical purposes. Because it has absolutely no health benefits at all, and it can cause severe bleeding, problems urinating, and later cysts, infections, infertility, as well as complications in childbirth and an increased risk in newborn deaths. It's mostly carried out on girls between infancy and age 15, so there you go, that they are still children when they're having this procedure. More than 125 million girls and women alive today have been cut in the 29 countries across the Middle East and Africa, where FGM is mainly concentrated. However, with increased migration, FGM practicing communities can be found worldwide. Europe, North and South America, Australasia. According to Roberts et al. 2014, it's estimated that in the UK, 66,000 women have not undergone FGM, with 33,000 girls considered at risk every year. So it is huge. FGM has been a specific criminal offence in the UK since '85, when the UK-wide Prohibition of Female Circumcision Act was passed. However, it's been updated by the Female Genital Mutilation Act of 2003. It modernised the effect of FGM and the offence of assisting a girl to carry out FGM on herself, and it also created an extra territorial offence to deter people from taking girls abroad, because I think they were quite often finding over here a lot of these practices were actually done overseas. So the police have got a really difficult job in having to try and find these girls and to stop them being taken overseas, what could look like a holiday, to actually have this procedure done. The College of Policing have given them quite a lot of guidance when speaking to potential victims. They said that the police need to make sure that the person's made to feel safe, ensure that a female officer conducts the interview wherever possible, consider the person may not wish to see a police officer from their own community, create an opportunity for the individual to disclose by speaking to them alone in private, don't make assumptions, give the individual time to talk, and obviously be sensitive to the intimate nature of the subject. Use simple language and avoid loaded or offensive terminology such as mutilation. Quite often in those communities they don't even refer to it as mutilation. And adopt a victim-centred approach, offer accurate information about the person's choices. There's also been some new measures added via the Serious Crime Act 2015, sections 70 to 75, which actually gives lifelong victim anonymity, which I think is really important. And it parents and guardians' liability for failing to protect a child from FGM, and also mandatory reporting from relevant professionals. So that includes healthcare professionals and teachers. In addition, I have some information on the charges if someone does. So going just into the history of FGM, according to the College of Policing, it stems from concepts of chastity, family honour, and the importance of marriage in societies where security and survival depend largely on making a good marriage. In some communities, only a woman who has undergone the procedure is deemed suitable for marriage, and as a result, the mothers allow or actively require their daughters to undergo this procedure as a way of protecting their future. These concepts are underpinned by beliefs regarding the position of women and girls within those culture. It's not limited by social class or education. I
think the irony there is the fact that some of the third world countries are actually people that don't get involved in FGM. If you look at the likes of South America and some of the Russian states, there's practically no FGM at all, and indeed in Africa, we've got some areas that is very high volumes and others that are not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I take your point about what you say about it's religious based. But you could argue, if you compare FGM and compare it to anybody within the Jewish faith.
Exactly.
Against the men. Poses the question, doesn't it?
It does, especially because they're children as well.
Yeah.
Very, very young children, so they're not actually making that choice of their bodies for themselves, but rather having that religious ideology put onto them and staying with them from the parents. Exactly. There is some information on interestingly, no one has actually been convicted of FGM in this country, despite those large...
there was one case of it, wasn't there?
One case that went to court, but...
it wasn't prosecuted.
The sentencing was increased. I know that it was increased up to 14 years now. Imprisonment is the... I seem to have lost it.
But obviously it's a very hard thing to prove beforehand. It's hard for the police to protect people against that when they, oh look, we're going on holiday, they don't tell their friends or family.
Exactly. And it's quite often too late. It's only come to the authorities' attention once a girl's already had the procedure and she's suffering complications, and she then goes to a doctor, and the doctor has a statutory requirement to then report it to the police. The deed's already done. And as much as we can now give this girl lifelong anonymity and we can take her to court to prosecute the parents, quite often, especially they don't.
It's a loyalty, isn't it?
It's a loyalty to your family.
So we're talking about FGM, and we're talking about families and religious beliefs in relation to FGM. Let's take that one step further then, where you basically they're using FGM as a preparation prior to saying that individual's ready then for marriage and partnership.
Yeah.
So let's take it one step forward and say, well, okay, if people have got strong beliefs about FGM, how does that link in to the forced marriage situation?
So the forced marriage is when you face physical pressure to marry. It could be threats, physical violence or sexual violence, or emotional and psychological pressure by another person. It's illegal in England and Wales, but this includes taking somebody overseas to force them to marry. Whether or not the forced marriage takes place, it's still a crime, and marrying somebody who lacks the mental capacity to consent to the marriage, whether there's pressure or not to do so, if they physically not in a state where you can say that they actually want to do it, you can get prosecuted for doing so, and that's according to the government website. And forcing anybody to marry can result in a sentence for up to 7 years in prison, whereas disobeying a forced marriage protection